My name's Ryan Shelton. I'm a co-host on the Imperfects, the Jewish grandson of Austrian and English immigrants. And I grew up on and am now currently living on Wurundjeri country. I'd like to recognise the traditional peoples of this continent whose land was stolen nearly 250 years ago. In particular, we at the Imperfects would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast was recorded, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The rich storytelling history of the world's oldest living culture is what we proudly pay homage to when we share stories on the Imperfects.
The Imperfects invites you into a very safe place. A place where we share without judgment and drink heaps and heaps of vulnerability. Grab yourself a cup. This is the Vulnerabilitea House.
Wow. 2 weeks in a row. Back in the tea house.
Round 2 of the tea house.
Round 2 of bonus episodes for the year.
I like how you're saying the bonus part with a lot more sensitivity because it's like a...
Oh, yeah, it's a more calming environment.
Yeah, bonus.
Bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last week I chose a card. We chatted, and now we're back for another Vulnerabilitea House.
Yeah.
It's good.
We are.
Have a good week.
Yeah, it's great, thanks. Got up to lots of things.
Oh, all right. Well, TMI. Jeez, settle down. Oh God, a lot of things. Josh, good.
Yeah, I've got a very sore thumb actually. Yeah.
Oh,
it looks pathetic.
Your thumb.
See, no, see that little dot?
Oh
there?
yeah.
Yeah, I was gardening yesterday, and have you ever seen a tool that you get like weeds out with? It's like got
Yes.
2 prongs, and
Yeah.
I accidentally with full force jammed it into my hand.
Ooh.
And it went really deep. And the hole that it made is honestly less than 1 millimetre by 1 millimetre, but I can't really use my thumb. It really hurts.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it was like woke me up during the night last night. But I feel like I can't really, it doesn't look, it's a little bit swollen.
Yeah, it's a bit red and
anyway.
yeah.
I hope that, yeah.
TMI.
So apart from that, I'm great.
PAI, perfect amount of information. So last week I chose a card. This week, Josh, you're picking the cards. How are you feeling about it?
A lot more nervous than I thought I would be.
Just to give you an appreciation for what our guests do when they turn up, not being part of the show and
I'm terrified. Yeah. It's been a while since I've been nervous doing this show. I was very nervous the first few times I spoke on the mic properly, and I feel like I've reverted back to that amount of nervousness. So I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
See if I got something to say.
The bluey cards are in position, ready to be picked.
Okay. All right.
Josh is picking the 3 cards from the top, as is tradition.
Do you think we'll do something like this on our live tour next year? Do you see us doing a Vulnerabilitea House live?
Great question. Great question. I think we'd have to do we have to drink some sort of tea. What a segment.
I'm not sure that's essential.
Maybe be wrapped. Okay, so for the next 5 minutes, tea sipping.
We thought we'd drop the question part.
Live.
And the cards and just do the tea.
Live. The boys drinking tea.
Okay, so the 3 cards are, how do you think people might talk about you behind your back? Yep. Who have you been envious of? And if you couldn't fail, what would be your next career move?
Ooh. I don't know if everyone else does this listening at home or wherever they are, but I always, the first thing when I hear this, I know it's your job to think of them, but I straight away think, what would I be choosing right now? Like,
what would you choose?
Well, it really scares me, that first one. What do people say behind your back? It terrifies me.
I don't think I've got the courage to answer that one.
I know.
Absolutely terrifies me.
Every now and again I see that one. Whenever that one comes up, I see the list. That one's like, I'd be scared to even think about it because I'd be worried to actually say it to you guys. Sorry, this is not my episode.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried to say it to you guys because then, depending on your facial expressions, it'd be like,
Could confirm whether.
If it looks really fidgety and awkward all of a sudden.
if I hit the nail on the head, damn.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that one. That's a bit too.
So not people behind your
much.
back.
I don't really have much to say about the next career move. I'm pretty happy in this one.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'll go with the envious one. I think I've got something a bit I could say. I think.
Yeah, this area just. I get like a visceral reaction to this just because I've spoken about it. And I mean, a few people have spoken about it on this podcast, actually.
It's actually quite a common thing that no one talks about, but it's apparent for a lot of people. So
Yeah,
and I think I would say I'm pretty, maybe I'll get to why I'm not now, but I reckon for a lot of my life, envy and jealousy was, I reckon, a bit of a problem for me. And but I'm not sure how many people, I think Soph would know that. Maybe you would know that, Hugh. I'm not sure if you do, but I don't think many people would know it because I was so ashamed of it as well. So I'd kind of try and counteract that by being over the top with, or not over the top, but I tried really hard to hide any kind of envy or jealousy because I'm like logically aware that it's a really not a good thing and an unhealthy feeling to have. But for a long time, for as long as, definitely from late teens onwards, I was like really struck with envy and jealousy for so much in my life, of so many people in my life. Almost, and this is a pretty awful thing to say, but almost everyone who I met along the journey of my sort of 20s who ended up having a lot of success, I found it really hard to be purely happy for them. And well, actually, on the jealousy part, interestingly, I've never been jealous in my relationship with Soph, but I'm very quick to be jealous in professional or creative work-related areas.
Yeah.
I remember there was actually a point when I remember probably a few months into dating Soph. We've been together for like 12 years now, but a couple of months in, I remember driving to her house. She lived in Flemington, and I was driving through that road that goes between Royal Park in Melbourne with the
the zoo is and stuff.
zoo and yeah. And I was jealous because I think like there was some guy she worked with who I was like jealous of or something. I was like getting a bit,
Are you jealous of her hanging out with him?
Yeah, like I felt an unhealthy, like, oh, they've been hanging out a bit. Like I wonder, yeah. And that was, and I'd been thinking that, and Jealous Guy by John Lennon, that song. Do you know that song?
No.
Oh, incredible song. That came on the radio or on whatever I had. It was on in the car. And it was like a split second thing where I heard that song, heard the lyrics to the song, and it was like, I could just switch it off. I'm like, well, it's a choice to be jealous. Like, so it's going to have male friends her whole life. I can choose to be jealous. I can choose to not be. I'm just going to choose to not be. And it solved it in my relationship. And I've never been jealous since, ever.
Wow, just chose it.
That's but
amazing.
I can stand by that and say it's completely true. I've never been jealous since in my relationship, but with Soph. But creatively and work related, like I don't know if it's weird to name it. Feels like a weird version of name dropping, but people that I've sort of come into contact with in life in my early 20s that have gone on to have great success. Actually, a good example is at uni from 18 to 20, I did media at RMIT in Melbourne, and I did it with Lewis Hobber, who's on Triple J and all sorts of things. Brilliant guy. And we were really, really close at uni. He was probably my best friend at uni. And then we didn't see each other for a long time. And I love the guy. And I found it really hard to be purely happy for him, seeing all the success that he had over the years, because I was just felt with this feeling of inadequacy. It was like the more success he had, the more inadequate I felt. I think because we were both doing the same we didn't come from the same place, but we were doing the same degree. So you would think, all right, we're starting from the same platform here. And we're so different, and he's so brilliant at what he does. But for so long, I really struggled to be purely happy for him. And there's a myriad of examples, but I think the Lewis one's interesting because we went up to the podcast awards last year, Ryan, and Lewis was there, and I haven't seen him basically since uni. And he came up and was really so nice about the show because he quite likes the podcast. And we had a really great chat about that. And we'd had a couple of drinks, and I was like, well, in the spirit of the show, I've just told him that I was like, that I've had insecurities about how well he's done. And it was a really great conversation to have because then he goes, well, when we're at uni, I always felt like, because I was this country kid and you were everyone else was city kids, I always felt like I was the loser and the outlier. And he admitted this this insecurity that he had from university. And I'd always seen him as the most confident man in the room, and it was this weird moment of like, well, you never really know what's going on behind people's psyche.
When you had that conversation, was your jealousy in that moment or envy gone, or was it?
Well, that I should say that I don't think I have this problem anymore.
Right.
And I'm so happy. It's such a wonderful thing to be able to say. And maybe we can get to why in a sec. Yeah. But I don't feel like I'm just nothing but happy for him and for anyone that I mention in this. But I also, when I was a lot younger, played music in a band, and we played at this bar. We were called the Kickers, and we played at a
wonderful band, one of my favourite of all time.
The Kickers,
yeah, the Kickers.
So when you were introduced on stage, did someone say, "And here's the kicker"? This is it's a great way to introduce you.
Maybe that's why we never made it. We never had the right announcer.
The Kickers.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
And we played in this bar in the city, and a girl that I'd done dance classes with when we were like 16, I think we'd made contact again, and she was like, can our bands play together? They were going to open for us. They opened for us, and then a few months later, we opened for them, and then their star continued to rise, and they're Big Scary, the band Big Scary, who are now one of Australia's biggest bands. And the same thing, like Joe is one of you could not imagine a nicer, better person than Joe. And the whole time I was like, I couldn't enjoy their music because there was a little bit of jealousy of like, why can't that be me? I guess I feel quite shameful admitting that out loud because of how great those people are, and I just hate the fact that I thought those things for such a long time. Like when I went to, but it wasn't just for people I knew. Like I'd go to big music. Like seeing music's probably one of my favourite things to do, and I love getting drunk and dancing and singing along. But I reckon one of the reasons I'd get extra drunk is because I'd always be jealous of whoever got to be playing on that stage. Of like, I wish that was me, and at like big music festivals and stuff, like ridiculously high, big bands. And I'd need to take that edge off of jealousy by drinking enough to kind of be able to just enjoy it.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
And I'd compare myself to, I'd compare myself and couldn't enjoy it. I remember talking to a mate years about and mentioning this to him, and he was like saying how ridiculous it is because he's like, I like playing golf, but if I like compare myself to Tiger Woods every time I played, I'd hate it. And it was a good line, but it didn't really help me at all. And I think I don't know what it is that's changed it, but I would say there are three things that I reckon there would probably be three things in my mind that have changed that. One of them kind of weirdly relates to what you talked about last week, which is having kids.
I was going to think that, yeah.
Has completely gotten rid of that. Because I remember having actually, I'd never realised this until then, but it was a similar epiphany when Charlie was really young of the choice thing of going, well, I don't want there's certain characteristics about myself. Like I'm far from perfect, but I think I was probably a worse version of myself before having kids. And part of it, I think, was that I was looking at Charlie, and after having him and now Augie, but it happened when I just had Charlie, of saying, well, I don't want my son. I don't want the role model for my son to be this kind of person. So I'm going to have to choose to not just to ignore that insecurity or that voice that drives that jealousy. Then
So you were motivated by Charlie
to be because I don't want him growing up with, and it wasn't so much the jealousy part of it. I think it was the insecurities that I didn't want Charlie to have a dad who was so down on himself all the time about stuff and said such awful things to himself.
But like in that situation, because do you worry that Charlie would be able to just instinctually tell? Because obviously you're not going to speak badly about yourself in front of your son, but he would just be able to, you'd worry that he would just be able to pick up on that.
Yeah, pick up on that. That's what's going on. I think it's if you have the inner dialogue that I've had for myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people have this, but the inner messages that you tell yourself over a long period of time, it becomes pretty clear that you're not able to be the best version of yourself or bring out. Yeah, you can't be the best version of yourself when you talk about yourself that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I reckon jealousy was one of the side effects of that negative self-talk, that pattern of talking. So I think the jealousy wasn't the reason. It was the negative self-talk that I didn't want Charlie to grow up with a role model who spoke to himself like that. And then secondly, I think this podcast, to be honest, because it's probably the first time in my life where I feel like I've done something that is truly me and not trying to be someone else. Whereas music, the whole time I was trying to be like those people that I was jealous of. Whereas this, I'm just being me, and it's working, and it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and it feels validating to be able to be myself, and for that to be good enough. It's a bit perverse that it's in front of such a large group of people, because I have a difficult time navigating that thing of like, is this genuine or is it just me getting more adulation so it covers up the cracks?
Mm-hmm.
But before lots of people were listening to it and it was just the three of us doing it, I could feel it changing the messages that I told myself on that pattern of self-talk. So thank you to both of you for that. Or maybe it's age. Maybe you just get older and you grow out of some of that stuff. I don't know. But
well, this is the happiest I've ever seen you in your entire life.
Yeah.
For me, that's what But like
more than pre-teenage years.
Gosh,
that's probably an impossible question to answer. But
similar type stuff. You remind me. It's meant to be your tea house, not mine. You remind me right now of yourself before you became a teenager, is what I would say. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'd put it down to two things. I think Charlie and Augie. Or your family, Sophie, as well.
Yeah.
I'd put it down to your family. I don't mean to leave Sophie out of that. I'd say your family, and then I'd say the podcast, because I feel like you are doing something that you are very responsible for the success of and very good at, and you're proud of it. I think you're very proud of the work that you do.
Yeah, very proud.
And so you feel the same way. I feel the same around you that I did when you were a kid, definitely. Wow. Yeah. And the thing I think of is we had a game called deck cricket that we played on a deck.
Deck cricket, yeah.
Yeah, we had a deck out the back of the house. We'd play deck cricket there, and there were just all these intricate rules, and we'd just play for hours and hours and hours and hours. And that was when it was probably just before Georgia got sick that we started playing the game, I think. And so when I'm around you, I have the same feeling, I guess, of that I had then. It's just everything's great, just like everything's happy. Every conversation that we go to is a happy one, or I feel like we're back in the business of making really happy memories. I reckon. Yeah. That I had the fondest memories of that, and so many fond memories since with you.
Yeah, but
there would be interspersed with, whether it was, with different things, the ups and downs of life. I feel like there's just all ups at the moment when I'm with you, which is, so yeah, I
feel the same.
And so that's why I think naturally through that, I know with my life when I'm feeling really good about everything I'm doing, I have very generous interpretations of other people's lives and experiences. So if someone that I don't agree with is doing something, or they're speaking a lot about on a topic that when I'm not going well myself, I just hate them, and hate's wrong, but I just criticize and spend way too much time being negative about them. Whereas, I feel like things are going quite well at the moment. So if someone's doing something, or I see someone doing this on social media, I have a much more generous. I'll just go, oh, look, they're trying so hard, like they're having a real crack at making this work for them, and I hope it turns out well. So I feel like you're a bit similar in that, like, I feel like you're very positive or understanding of people at the moment.
I think it's funny you should mention that exact example, because I noticed in the last week, like, obviously you're confronted with other people's behaviour or like, I guess in traffic, or that's a pretty cold example, but on Instagram, and like just every day you're confronted by the behaviour of other people. And I realised, like, I was sort of interpreting their behaviour negatively at the start of the week. And it was interesting that the first reaction I had then was like, oh, what's going on with me at the moment then? Like, what am I not doing right? Like, what have I done? And I realised that there are a few things I wasn't proud of, that I wasn't happy with, that I'd done in the last couple of days. And I was like, I think it's a really good barometer for me now of how I'm doing with my own mental health, how I interpret other people's behaviour. And I really strive to be in a position of generous is the perfect word you said before, where you can kind of just feel nothing but happiness, which I think I genuinely do now. I think that jealousy thing, I can't think of anyone whose success I'm jealous of now, which is it feels so good to be able to say.
Oh, must be so good.
Yeah. And then when people's behaviour is that I don't quite like, which is the sort of flip side of that, rather than getting angry and pissed off about them, it's such a great way to feel sort of empathy for them, rather than and a generosity of like, they must be going through something or whatever you need to do to rationalise it, so it doesn't affect you. So you're frictionless, to use the term from
Jeff Warren,
who we had on. I went and saw the Strokes when they came out here, because they're my favourite band of all time, and it was so nice to go, because this sort of epiphany and this whole change of seeing the world and not having to feel inadequate every time I went to a music gig and think, why are they successful and why am I so shit, which is the dialogue that was going in my head, has happened over COVID. So I hadn't been to a live show for years, and to go to that and just it was so nice to be there and just purely enjoy it for just nothing but loving being there and having the opportunity to go and see your favourite band live and just bask in how fun it is. It was a lovely, lovely thing. Yeah.
There's something like so profound about that idea of, because of course anyone who's listened to the podcast for a while knows that I've experienced extreme envy over the years and jealousy. But I think that's really interesting, like what you said about the moment that you started doing something where you felt like it was your true self, like you felt like it's nothing to do with, like, I mean, the podcast is now making a bit of money, but it's not like setting the world on. It's not like this, we're not buying islands or anything. It's not like it's not like we're richer than anyone. It's nothing to do with money. But there's something kind of really fascinating about, like you saying, when you felt like you were your true self, that's when the envy went away.
And finding success in being
finding your place,
not monetary success, but finding, like, working, like it might be weird to say this to you now, but like for my earlier years in childhood, you were a celebrity that I hadn't met, and this incredible performer who I respected so much. So I'd be lying if it also wasn't like doing something with you and it going well and just being an easy, wonderful thing to do. That's a part of it as well.
Yeah, but I mean, well, maybe, but I actually think, like, I relate much more to what about you doing the thing that is authentic to you, like this, whether it be this podcast or being a parent. it's like you feel comfortable and it feels right to you.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe I'm just trying to sort of like think this through as I'm talking, so it might not be right. But when we're envious of someone, we're kind of, I mean, this is probably not 100% true, but I think in many cases when you're envious of someone or jealous of someone else's success, you maybe haven't quite landed on the thing that is truly meaningful and authentic to you.
Yeah.
Or you haven't found success, or you haven't found, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think it's like once you do the thing that you love and it feels right, and that doesn't necessarily mean I got the job that pays a lot of money or gives me a lot of power. If you don't enjoy it and it doesn't feel authentic to you, it doesn't matter. You're still going to always be envious of the person who's got more than you, because you're kind of, I think, desperately trying to find an identity that feels right. And when you see other people nailing their supposed identities that seem good, it's like, oh, he seems great.
Yeah.
Like that, there's a lot of stuff in that I want that. And because you haven't figured out what your thing is, you're just like, well, I want that one. I want that identity.
Yeah.
But then when you land on the one that feels right for you, and you've got your identity, and you feel like happy and peaceful, and you feel like your life has meaning that is authentic to you, then the other identities are like, well, they're good, but I know I like my one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I've really quite nailed that, unfortunately, but somewhere in my brain it's really good.
I know exactly what you're saying.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, good.
And I think it allows you to then celebrate their identities more.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
Yep.
gee, and that's the pure happiness for other people's success, especially people that you like, but like you think they're great people. That's the worst part of it, is thinking that person's fantastic and I can't be. And you've spoken about this with you and Hamish, that awful feeling of loving someone but not being able to be
happy for them.
I mean, none of those people I mentioned are anywhere near the relationship that you have with Hamish as far as closeness. They're people that I've been friends with along the way, but it still sucks to not be able to be. Yeah, like there's another mate of mine who, brilliant photographer, who was doing it as a hobby, an incredible photographer, and we became friends. I couldn't love this man anymore. But because he was doing it a hobby and he was doing Instagram posts and they were becoming really, and he got quite a big profile on Instagram and people were buying his art. And I sort of did photography and film as a job. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like someone's handing out successful identities and you haven't been given one yet.
Yeah.
It's like, hang on, how many of those you got in your pocket? Can I have my successful identity where it gets praise and stuff? Because I'm just here not knowing what the fuck to do, you know?
Yeah, and so so in his case, I'm close, very close with him. So it's a different case to the others because I see him a lot. When he had this big profile and was quite successful, I would tell him how happy I was for him, but there was a little bit inside of me going like, I'm so jealous of his success and how well he's going.
There's probably room for both in some circumstances, I think.
Yeah, in some, but now I think because my personality card's been handed out and I'm kind of owning it, I think it's so nice to just be nothing but, and not pretend, just be nothing but happy for someone that you respect and love so much.
I would say this is really common. And that's not to downplay what you've just shared, but
I hope I'm not alone.
Well, I feel like a lot of people would experience this a lot, especially if you're feeling like you're struggling to find your way or your path. Anyone else who is succeeding, even if it's not a similar, if it's in a remote, I mean, you wouldn't be jealous of, Paddy Mills' success as a basketballer, but anything remotely in your field, I think they're a really common thing to go.
Yeah.
Exactly the analogy you gave is great.
Yeah,
like giving out
good.
Success and going.
Is it maybe not the feeling of like being literally jealous of what they're doing, but maybe jealous of the fact that they appear to have found their thing?
Yeah, that's probably part of it. And I think it probably hits harder when it seems like it's your thing too.
Mm-hmm.
But
and it's publicly acknowledged. Like when lots of people are going, "This is amazing. What you're doing is the best, and you're incredible."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think interestingly, when your self-esteem is particularly low, then I think all you're craving is that the image of success they've got, and therefore you look at areas that you've got no skill or like that's not you, but it doesn't matter. It's like that person's having success, so I'm a bit jealous of them as well. But like, why the hell would I be jealous of someone who I have no interest or ability in that area anyway? But it sort of, I think the worse your insecurity get, the more ridiculous the scenarios and of envy and jealousy become, maybe.
I mean, what's really cool is that now that you feel the way that you feel, and we're doing the podcast, because there's a very similar parallel with me. We've got very different stories, but yeah, the podcast is a big reason for me as well. Why I feel it's much easier for me to be happy for people now, because I feel this feels very right to me, and it took longer than most people would hope to find that thing. And of course, I've done lots of stuff that I've enjoyed, and I've not to downplay all the great things I've done before this, but I think exactly like you're saying, something about, I think that's probably why it works, is because we all like it and it all feels right for us. But yeah, I have a very, very similar relationship with the podcast, where I feel that I can be happier for people because I'm happy within myself.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really fascinating stuff. Like, yeah, I have a lot to say on it, but this is your thing, so I don't want to go too far into it. But I think what I would like to say is I've seen the transformation. It's been huge. It's come over you. The combination of family and podcast, and more family than, well, no, I won't say that. I think equal sort of have influenced you in different ways, but I think it's just great to see, because I creatively, I think you're incredible as well, but you've never really believed it, I don't think.
No.
But now I think that you see you're working along Ryan, someone that you've idolised for a long time, like working with him, not like, for him, or you work together on stuff, and you see the respect that Ryan has for your ideas, for your contributions. I think that's given you the self-belief to feel like, not only have I found something I love doing, but I'm also good at it. And I think that's helped you in so many areas of your life.
Yeah, it's interesting you said the creative thing, because I don't consider myself, I don't feel like I've gotten more, like when I was feeling this way, more insecure about myself, I would have thought that the answer was I need better ideas, more creativity, and more brilliant work. And I don't really feel like I feel like now I'm just more okay with saying I'm not that creative. Like comparing creativity is such a bullshit, stupid thing to do. But I don't feel like I've suddenly become this like thing that I wanted to become, which was this sort of creative artist with brilliant things that people went, whoa, look what he's just done, whether it be music or whatever. But I feel like I'm 100% okay with the cards I've got. Like
the bluey cards.
I feel like, I can't do, I don't have the talents that Ryan has in his areas. I don't have the... sorry to cut you off, but you've accepted your imperfections, or you're embracing your imperfections as who you are. That I can do some things. I know I can do some things pretty well. I know I can't do these things as well as Ryan can do his things, and I know I'm not going to be a brilliant artist that comes up with a way of painting. Not that I could ever paint, but or this music that everyone goes, whoa, that's changing the whole, that's like the Beatles in the early 60s kind of thing. I know that ability is not in me, and I'm really happy about it and comfortable with it.
That's
and
great.
I'm happy with the cards I've got.
What I would say to that is you don't know that yet, because you don't know what's coming. So I just think it's a little bit inaccurate and restrictive.
Oh yeah.
For you to say that you've kind of like accepted the fact that I won't do that. Because who knows?
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, no one's ever going to do the Beatles again.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to happen. So just
Well, yeah.
remove that from your from the list of things that you're hoping to achieve. It's like, God, it'd be good to bang out a Beatles or something. Early 60s Beatles. I won't do that, I guess. Fucking failure. So it's like there are a bunch of things you compared. The things that you're comparing yourself to are things that were completely, not always, but often very original, but always very authentic to those specific people in those specific circumstances at that specific time. Can never be repeated. And I would argue that what we're doing now, yes, you haven't done it all by yourself. None of us have. None of the three of us could have done this on our own. It requires the three of us.
Yeah.
So I would argue that we're still so early in this, and of course we're not the Beatles in the early 60s, but this is special to us.
Yeah.
And we get enough lovely messages from people to know that like we're having an impact of sorts. I truly believe that even if no one was listening, we would still be wanting to do it because it's like this feels so right.
Yeah.
It was for the Beatles. It was easy. From all the docos I've seen, that was easy doing what they were doing.
Yeah,
it was
for
just
them.
It was just for them.
Yeah.
For them, because it was like, well, that's just what they do. It's like so many successful people that I've spoken to or I've heard interviewed. I get the sense that the things that they are praised for and that have changed the world, of course, it's hard work, but the conception of it is often not that
Hard for them.
crazy for them because it's just that's the thing they do.
It's them being them.
It's them being them.
Yeah.
So I would say that while you think this is, the things that you're doing now is nothing special like that, I bet there would be loads of people who would disagree. But to us and to you, it doesn't seem that special because it's just like, well, we put our head down and we do the podcast and we love it. But
Yeah, and have fun. I think that's maybe it was I misspoke, but I think rather than, I feel like the pressure's taken off. So doing what we do just kind of feels like a version of play, and fun and interesting, and I can just be in it rather than thinking, is this going to be the thing that is brilliant or whatever?
Yeah.
And I think you raised a really interesting point then. For years I was obsessed, and I think I've spoken about this, but obsessed with the idea of it. I think because of how low my self-esteem was, I felt like I needed to do it all myself to fill that self-esteem bucket. So I knew that whatever I'd done was all me, so I could get back up to the level of feeling good about myself. But what I didn't realize was that doing it is so, I mean, for me personally, maybe some people are different, but for me personally, working together with a group of people to do something is so much more rewarding and enjoyable and satisfying. And that's the way I want to work. And
like the things that you said before about me are very, very lovely and humbling. Well, I feel, it's very flattering. But as you know, it wasn't really until, when I look back on to make it about just me quickly, just to put this in perspective, if for you to look at me before we knew each other and think like, he's, to compare in any way and to think that like my self-esteem was low as well then. So it's like, even though I was doing things that I was relatively proud of and working on big shows and, had famous friends and things like that, it wasn't until I reflected on Hugh, when Hugh came up to me in the cafe when we first met, and he told me that like sometimes when he does a talk, he would watch my videos on Instagram and it would make him happy enough to be able to do his talk. Like that was from that moment on, that's when everything changed. Because I was like, now I know why I'm doing it. That's when and only upon reflection, speaking to Ben Crow and the whole journey that I went on and then continue to go on. But I only say that just to put into perspective, because I'm sure if you spoke to the Beatles, speak to George Harrison during some of those years, he would not be, he would have days where he'd be thinking, I'm not as good as John.
Yeah.
Like it's all relative, and I guess I say that because it's people are we're all so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and we're always looking to other people. We're always comparing ourselves and saying, "Oh, I'm not as good as them. I wish I had them. I wish I was John or Paul." You know,
There's a definite theme emerging in your vulnerabilities, which are just around music and performance, and just
going to leave that there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking live show. I'm just
Live Nation in this conversation.
What was if you couldn't fail, what would be your next career move? If I didn't fail, I'd love to be a music
rock star.
Well, I think that ship might have sailed, but maybe just like a singer-songwriter kind of guy.
Pop star?
Pop star. Like a kind of...
Pete Murray.
Pete Murray is still time.
Yeah, he was like quite old when that album dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about Pete Murray a lot.
Really?
He was on SAS and he was going so well, and they had to fight someone, and he dislocated his elbow.
Oh.
And he was out. He was
Poor Pete Murray.
Sorry, I don't want Pete Murray to think we were laughing at him, because I listen to his music so much.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess there is a theme.
I'm thinking live tour. I'm thinking Josh and music. And
I don't know if that's a very good idea.
Well, I don't know.
I think it's a really interesting idea. Really interesting thought to just pop into the cosmos and see what happens with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
as people continue to decide whether they want to buy a ticket or not to the live show, just consider that, the possibility of, I don't know, Josh Van Cuylenburg's first ever live performance.
Launching his music career at Hamer Hall.
Yeah. I mean, who
it's good
knows?
to start in the smaller venues and work your way up.
Something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, thanks for sharing that. It's as I said, I do think a lot of people, I think it's not uncommon, but to hear someone talk about it like that, I think is really, really powerful.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks. It feels good to have said it, actually.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
If this episode has been triggering for you, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is hosted and co-produced by Hugh Van Cuylenburg, Brian Shelton and Josh Van Cuylenburg. This episode was produced by Bridget Northeast, filmed by Andy Poole and edited by George Martin. A special thanks to Dr. M for her expertise and guidance. We'd also like to thank the Resilience Project for their ongoing support.